welcome to another installment of Win with Glenn, where we have been talking, it's been taking a little more time, but it's time worthwhile spent, where we've been talking about things that you need to know, my top list of things that typically lead to business failure in experience, life, etc.
Welcome to the Win with Glenn video podcast, where Glenn Henderson and special guests will give you the tips, insight, and tools you need to grow, develop your business and career. Go with us as we dive into the best practices and rock-solid principles that will elevate you and bring proven success. Now, here's Glenn Henderson.
Jim, thank you for joining me. It has been, as we said, I may not be able to tell you what to do, and we can do that as well, and we shall. But first, I wanted to set it up and tell you what not to do. I was reminded on the highway I was driving, and you're going from point A to point B, and all along the way you see no turn, no left, no right, and so to get to your destination, we try to tell you don't do this, don't do
keep
this,
you on the path.
or if you do, the bridge is out here, or so that's kind of this whole concept has been all about things that typically what causes people to wreck. It'll get into a wreck.
Yeah. So you now have your business up and going.
That's right.
You're doing it. You're doing what you dream that you're going to do, and what to avoid.
Well, and I've always spoken about and used the concept, and we'll take a deeper dive into that as well, that a business often is like a body. I said a baby, and so, but it has vital signs. And so when you go to doctor, there's typically, no matter what doctor you go to, what clinic,
They're going to check that.
there's going to be some standards, some things that they're going to check the blood pressure, they're going to check the temperature, etc. Well, it's the same thing with business. There's certain things, no matter what business you're in, they are vital signs that an indicator. So we call them key performance indicators or KPIs that you should have. Now, don't just make them up.
No.
So these are KPIs that you should say are vital to the business, and it could be how many people come. If you're in the retail, how many people are coming through the front door? It could be how much are they spending, and when you really get down to the science of this, then it starts informing per hour. It's you look at it for seasons, days, and that's when it gets kind of complicated. And you need to have models, and there's models out there. There's
well, we live in a time of good technology now. Years ago, you just have to model it out,
You know, and you didn't even know what the model.
You didn't know, but then now we have all this technology, and I wrote an article about this and spoke about it. I've spoken about it more times than I can think of. I just called it the top 10 things that keep business owners up at night. And I go down the list and say, does this keep you up? Yeah. Does this keep you up? Yeah. These are the things that should keep you up. You should be paying attention to them, But if you have them in place, you won't fail. But my point of my little tongue-in-cheek thing was, if you're up at 3 o'clock in the morning worrying about this, it might be too late,
You just said something that might save my marriage again. You did. It's very important, and that is you ask questions, and people don't like to have other people ask questions. Because when Regina asked me questions, it's like the Gestapo.
It's a hidden reason.
Would you please stop asking me? But when people, that's KPIs. You have to have
KPIs.
You have to have some model, some tool that asks you critical questions, and then you answer them. You put the inputs in, and see, you don't know the questions to answer.
No,
I'm sorry, you don't know the question to ask. So that's why the models will say, well, they'll have whatever these 5, 6, 7.
Well, you have a dashboard on your car.
You need to know. That's right.
If you have a dashboard on your car, it tells you what the fuel is, whether the battery's charging, whether the water's getting too hot. Of course, now with all the technology, it tells you the tire pressure on your car.
And that's the other thing, Jim, that every business needs is a dashboard. And the dashboard.
And there are models that software you can buy that different industries that give you a dashboard.
And what does a dashboard do? A dashboard pushes information versus you pulling it, meaning that you shouldn't have to ask for it. We did that with our logistics company, and that was another edge
Yeah.
that we had with Motorola. They said, we want you to give us a dashboard, meaning we don't want to have to call you.
Right.
We don't want to have
We just
to
want
ask.
to look and see.
Right. We want that information pushed out to
Right.
us. And now my staff have a retail store. Every day they provide me
With the
key
dashboard.
performance indicators. They provide me information, letting me know. I don't call them. I don't have to ask. And so it's pushed out to you. So that's the thing that we want to tell you is another reason oftentimes.
And we ought to
people
probably
fail.
dive into that later too. There's good tools out there now to do that. I've actually taken many companies through that, setting up the dashboard, but it's become more and more automated for small businesses, that don't have the resources to hire a consultant team and come in and do all the stuff. There's a lot of resources, so maybe in the later segments we can talk
Okay.
about some of those for a small business,
Right.
because you have several small businesses now. But
So
that's critical.
Another reason why businesses tend to fail. So I set this up with a question mark that was asked in Alice of Wonderland.
Alice.
And it said, it was the lady that kept saying, off with their head, off with their head. And so her question was this: is it better to be loved or to be feared?
Yeah. So HR, we're going to talk about HR.
HR. So
Human resources.
when people run leadership, and Steve Jobs had the reputation of ruling with an iron hand, and so that's kind of what I wanted to throw out there. I can't tell you how many leaders and businesses I've been around where, people they're demanding, and this is going to be this way,
Right.
and that goes back to culture. It goes back to the other topics that we talked about.
Right.
But that is while it may be effective for a period of
death
time,
wish.
we talk about toxicity.
Yeah.
And as great as Steve Jobs was, that's the founder, if you didn't know it, of Apple Computer, and that went on with Pixar and many other things. As great as he was amongst especially, this is horrible, especially after he passed,
Right.
his reputation and how people talked about how the organization ran. Now, while that may be effective for a period of time and it shows up in
Short
certain
term.
KPIs,
Right.
but the undercurrents, you're going to have high turnover. You're going to have, once again, when we talked about reputation, you're not going to get the best of the best. Even in the military, when you start people who drive, you're not going to get the best out of people
Right.
ruling with an iron hand, just being ruthless or everything's going to be my
Yeah.
way. I have it in the book that I wrote when people say it's either my way or the highway. And I say, well, that's why the highways are so clogged.
Yeah.
And so
Well, in my work with military, with military folks, I've asked in the past about the hard-handed, the old school, get in your face, you'll do what I tell you to do.
Vince Lombardi, right?
Yeah,
Your football teams.
Right, that's another example. But in my work with some military contracts, we would talk about this over dinner or whatever. And this is an interesting thing because I was not in the military, and I know you weren't either. So, but here's what they would say: during war, if we're at war, I want you to tell me, get your butt out of gear and
Right.
go do this, right? But we're being fired upon. We're under attack, and then you can yell at people and you can tell them to go do their job. But when we're not in war, that's not the leadership strategy
Right.
that works.
Right.
The challenge, and these guys would tell me because they had been in war, the problem is that some of these people who are direct like that and command and control kind of leaders, then when the war's over, they can't stop.
Right.
They just still want to do that. And they need to shift back to teamwork, to collaborative leadership, servant leadership. In my work, I've written a lot on transformational leadership. But that command and control thing only works under extreme pressure. There's a fire. We got to get out of here. Give us directions.
Right.
Tell me to do what I
think
got to
there's
do.
rare occasions when people are, especially in business, so military is different, but in the context of business where you might be under so much pressure that you need someone
You
to
have
just
to
come
have-
in and just you must do this.
That's right.
Because if you do that, just think about it. If you did that and it was an air traffic controller, they already are trying to manage airplanes and
Complexities
and all types of
and-
stuff coming in, and then you coming in screaming and hollering. And I've seen this.
Not gonna work.
I've seen
I have
people.
to.
I've
I
seen
have
people
to.
driven to tears.
Right. I've seen
and-
people
and
get up
demeaned
and walk right out.
And so I'm hoping that people get that in their hearts and in their minds that, and what causes it oftentimes is things from home, stress, the business, financial,
Right.
people mess up.
Fear.
People mess up. They do things that are wrong. They do dumb things. These are things that people do. And then it puts you under stress. And then the next thing you know, you start barking out. So in entrepreneurship, as you're in business, you're in leadership, this goes back to what we talked about as a rock solid principle. It all starts with you. It has to be a non-negotiable.
Right.
People tell me I have the patience of Job. I'll say, who's Job?
Yeah.
But anyway, so
The guy that
but
lost
yeah,
everything. That's who it
but
is.
I've had to manage. If you're going to manage a business that people are watching, there's two more. So the other thing that I found, if people either have poor or no good HR policy, yeah, just poor what human resource policy.
You just kind of go, just make it up as you go.
Yeah, you need to have even as small as you may be, you need to have something, and this goes back to in writing of this. It goes back to your core values. And so, what some of the things that we had in place with 401k plans, you recognize birthdays. I had a policy in place that people said, "Are you crazy?" And it was toward vacation, and it was
Right.
either
I remember
use it
that.
or lose it.
I did.
And
Yeah.
people say, "Well, why would you do that? Why would you say use it or lose it? Can't we just have a rollover?" I said, "No. What we want to do is make sure you vacate." Because
You get rest.
a person that gets a vacation, they're rested. We want you to vacate. And then also we had a sabbatical put in it
That's
after
correct.
every
Yeah.
7 years. We're going to give you 4 weeks. We want you to go away for 4 weeks.
Rest, come
And-
back renewed.
And what that did in reverse is that created, once again, that culture where people said, this is a great place. I enjoy being here. I want to work here.
There's reward.
And a lot of people think for some reason that being generous, for some reason that being
evil.
why would I want to do this to the people?
right.
Why would I want to give them more? Why would I want to be nice to them? These are and I know it's politically correct or not, but these are employees. They work for me. No, we're a team. I'm part of the team. I'm an employee of this company, and so all of this is surmising in my last one.
I've had many conversations before we stop with people,
We got 30 seconds, so
with-
give me a snapshot.
with owners who think that being generous is going to cost them. But I'm telling you, if you're generous with your employees,
Right.
they will reward you with higher performance and more loyalty, which is way cheaper than replacing them with another worker.
So you don't have to learn lessons. This is Winning with Glenn. We've been talking about the top 5, and we've given you more than 5 things that people do that typically leads to failure. And so hopefully you now will know, don't make that turn, don't make this turn, but I'm going to stay on the straight and narrow, and I'll see you next time, Win with Glenn.
Thank you for joining us for the Win with Glenn video podcast. Stay connected by following and subscribing to this podcast on these platforms. Join us every week as Glenn and special guests give you the tools you need to grow and have a successful business or career.